Hi YouTube! First of all, yes, this video is a little bit later than I anticipated. The reason for that is because my dad had to borrow my microphone for a work thing for a few days, and I didn't want to subject you to crappy headset mic quality. So for that, I'm sorry. But with that being said, on to the subject for today. So, today, we're continuing with our Creating a Magical Girl VTuber series. This is where we're putting together everything we studied the last few videos, and coming up with our magical girls based on the concepts that we came up with before, which were radioactive, ice, and void. So the first thing I did was create a base sketch on which to draw their magical girls. I decided to forego worrying about things like diversifying body types and heights for now, in lieu of just getting the basic outline and frame concept down and to have something to work off of. And then I'll go into it and add those more personalized details to each character later. Those are generally things that I would like to leave to somebody who would buy the character, customization options just to make it feel more personable to them. So, Ice is actually the one that I had the most trouble with, which is why I decided to cover her first. I had several ideas in mind, ranging from something like Skodi from Norse lore, to a snow maiden Ojo, and the latter is what I went with. In addition, I made her into a sort of frozen zombie, when her home was covered in ice, and she no longer had anything to protect. Her mind eventually began going down into dark paths. An evil force began to influence her loneliness, leading to her to embrace the frozen, lifeless serenity. To do this, I decided that her hair should be up in a side bun, to keep that silhouette intact with a slight asymmetry, especially since, silhouette-wise, the rest of her is mostly symmetrical. Later on, I gave her a little hairpin to bring even more attention to her head and face. I gave her a long, high-low skirt with fitted bodies for visual appeal, and then I gave her some armor-like elements, such as shoulder guards and a cape. I wanted her to have a lot of flowy elements to remind the viewer of snow, ice, and wind. When coloring, I mostly stuck to the color palettes that I had made before, using gradients where appropriate. I was originally just going to leave the skirt as a solid blue, but then I had an idea, and I decided to add a bit of purple and some pink, which wasn't in the original color palette, but I wanted it to resemble an aurora. I made her skin blue-gray to show how long she's been undead, and I even added some details where she might have stitched new skin to the old as her body decays. I think if she were to have a good magical girl form, it would be a flashback from before she became like this, because I'm not really sure where she would be able to come back from. And that's the Ice Magical Girl. What do you think? Next up is our Void Magical Girl. I envisioned Void and Eldritch powers sort of like a Lovecraftian appeal, as well as the inspiration from World of Warcraft and Homestuck. So I decided to make this girl a scholarly type. Perhaps she was a bright young magic student, just coming into her own, and who became far too obsessed with forbidden tomes. And now she can't go back, and all of her magic is corrupted by the horror terror that infected her mind. I'll admit I had a lot of inspiration from Rose Lalonde in particular for this one, with a dash of Twilight Sparkle. I also took some inspiration from the Alchemist class line of Ragnarok Online, and, of course, the Alchemist from Full Metal Alchemist. That kind of vibe where you're trying to learn what you're not ready for. As such, I gave her something of an academic uniform. Not necessarily school, but perhaps even a teacher, and made her more knightly affectuations to it, such as the waistcoat, gemstone, and formal pauldron over the half cape. I gave her something of wild, unkempt bangs and a loose braid, showing that she tries to keep it out of her face, even if she's not particularly concerned with being presentable. I added dark tears that would probably only appear when she actually cries, and little tentacle markings on her neck and face, showing that she's been touched by the void. After this, I realized that I'd been drawing from the wrong color palette the whole time, which is why I changed it at the last minute, and I'll have a screenshot of what it looks like with the fixed palette. It's not a whole lot different, so I just decided to treat that as how you can use the same color palette for two different characters and still get a pretty good vibe for each as long as you're consistent with the shape and accessorization. Overall, I actually really like this character, and I might be tempted to... Finally, this is the first character that I worked on, but she's my favorite, so she goes last in the video. She's our radioactive space magical girl. I actually have a lot to say about her, and we're gonna get into some fun science stuff with this, so hold tight. The first thing... So, I gave her a green sun choker and hairpiece to hold up her ponytail, which is also meant to resemble a fireball, and was also kind of inspired by the likes of Homestuck, because when I think of radioactive characters, my mind goes to Jade Harley and Bec Noir. I messed with her hair a few times and finally came up with something that I liked. Then I also gave her some of those glow-in-the-dark cybergoth hair tie-in things. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they're actually called. I gave her a gas mask because, for some reason, people associate masks with radiation, and, you know, I think it just ties the whole thing together pretty well. It adds a feeling of mystery. Her outfit, I wanted to leave mostly utilitarian, so I made it a bodysuit with cutouts to show her bosom, belly, and one leg, which is infected by leaking radium. So, as an interesting science fact, while the sun is not actually green, in some cases it can appear green in our sky, depending on the makeup of the Earth's atmosphere at any given moment. Which is why auroras commonly contain green. The UV radiation from the solar storm reacts with particles in our atmosphere. Well, that's more or less a simple way to explain it anyway. So I thought the idea of the sun being green in her corrupted form would be fitting. Another interesting fact, I made her hair orange. I originally did this just because, well, color theory. But then I remembered that one particular flavor of orange paint is in fact radioactive, and it is made using uranium oxide. It was commonly used in Fiestaware and other brands of dishware in the mid-20th century. And in all technicality, it should be perfectly safe to interact with and eat off of as long as the paint's not damaged in any way. You won't catch me doing that, though. So, either way, it was a little bit of a happy accident. The green we usually associate with radioactivity is actually more commonly comes from radium in everyday objects, which is also radioactive and found alongside uranium and thorium. You should look up the Radium Girls if you're interested in learning a bit more about that. It's absolutely fascinating. I like to imagine this character being a very lonely sort of person, up until her good counterpart / enemy magical girl helped her get her radioactive powers under control. Then she might transition into a more fire-oriented after defecting to the side of good. This design is my absolute favorite out of them all today. But tell me, which one did you like the best? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like this, consider liking the video if you liked it. And maybe subscribe and click the bell. I do videos about VTubing, tech, games, and especially art. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye now!